as the Deputy Minister who is here representing the Ministry of Public Enterprises, and welcome the Eskom board as led by the chairperson, as well as the Eskom management, staff of Parliament. This is a sitting of the Select Committee on Public Enterprises and Communications, and it is held within the provisions of Parliament, and therefore we take it that everybody understands that we are, when in this platform, within the precinct of Parliament, and the parliamentary rules apply. We have convened this Select Committee meeting in order to get a briefing from Eskom in relation to the tariffs which have been effected, and we expect Eskom to brief us as such on these tariff increases for the current financial year 2023-2024. But over and above, we will also touch on the pertinent issues that relate to the work of Eskom, and therefore, when the time comes for the engagement, we will not only romanticize the issue of the tariff increases, but we'll deal with some of the issues that we think are relevant in terms of the national interest. Now, I wish to say the meeting is duly opened and you are all welcome. Because we are going to be entertaining this briefing, I will not have to go through the issue of the entire agenda, but we'll have our own meeting where the guests will be allowed to leave, and then the issue of quorum will only be considered at that stage. But for now, I wish to say that the second item would be dealing with apologies. From my side, in the office of the chairperson, I have received the apology from the minister. And I think also the DM, when he's given an opportunity to speak, he will also touch on that apology. The other apologies from the Honorable Bibi will be joining us a little bit late. And therefore, those are the only two apologies that we have received in a written form. That being the case, allow me, honorable members, to invite the Deputy Minister to preface the briefing from the
Chairperson.
Yes, Honorable Nana. Hold on, Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister. Yes, Honorable Nana.
I'm sorry, Chairperson, for pulling your meeting a bit back. I would like to submit an apology on behalf of Honorable Karin Fesser. She is engaged in another meeting. Thank you.
That apology is noted, Honorable Nana. Thank you for bringing us bringing it to our attention. At all material times, though, we always encourage members to submit formal apologies, but I guess maybe it's an issue of emergency. Thank you for that, nonetheless. Deputy Minister Obed Bapela, this is your maiden appearance in this committee. You're very first, and we welcome you. And we also wish to take this opportunity to wish you all the best in your new portfolio as the Deputy Minister of Public Enterprises. And we are looking forward indeed to working with you. And may I just say that one of the experiences, Deputy Minister, which I wish to say from the onset, is that our committee is scheduled to always meet on the Wednesdays, and we've always had a situation where both the minister and the deputy minister always fail to pitch when we invite. But we do know that it's a cabinet day. Cabinet committees are also held in the same day. So it's a matter that has been a challenge. And I would like you to note it that whilst we have not made an alternative date, I would appeal that at all material terms, just make sure that the ministry gets represented here to lead the delegation of the entities that fall under the ambit of public enterprises, because it has made our committee not to sit in a little while now. We've had to endure a couple of postponements, which makes our work a little bit difficult. So I'm grateful that we have you here today, and it's a breather, and it promises that what I have been raising is being attended to. So we welcome you, Deputy Minister, and as I say, we look forward to working with you. We now wish to give you the platform to address the Select Committee. Over to you, Deputy Minister Obed Papela.
Thank you very much, Chairperson of the Select Committee, Honorable Mkiva, and to all members of the Select Committee in the NSOP. And indeed, the apology of the Minister, as you recorded, today is a cabinet day, and so he is in cabinet. But I will take note also of the issue that when at some points you are meeting and there's a cabinet committee where both minister and deputy ministers are required, we will then be guided by us dividing ourselves so that we comply with us appearing on whatever subject matter that needs us or one of our state-owned entities. I take note of that, and here I am today, obviously leading a delegation from the department and also from our state-owned company, Eskom. And in as far as the department, the DDG Ubeshini is the one that is leading the team of the DPE, and there are others that are there. And from the Eskom, on the board side is the board member, Professor Mpomakwana, and but also there are executive members also led by Acting Group Chief Executive Khalib Kasim. They will introduce themselves at the point when they are speaking in terms of the full nature of the teams that is accompanying them. Chair, we just want really to underscore the issue that the issue of the tariffs obviously is a painful element, but at the same time, there's a business also to run. And I think there has been quite a number of debates in the past whether electricity costs in South Africa are high or less in comparison with other countries globally, particularly those that are the third world countries or the so-called third world countries. And then also in South Africa, the increment at some points, Eskom was rejected and there will go a period without any increment. And now with this current increment, when the presentation is done, you will show that it's a phased out process. Understanding the cost of living also that people are subjected to due to other external factors that are beyond us. The conflict of Russia and Ukraine has exacerbated in terms of the cost of living due to crisis of shortage of fertilizers globally, and shortage of certain grain and wheat, and then also the energy crisis that Europe is facing as a result of that particular conflict. And it has an impact on Africa as a continent, and just juxtaposing those particular elements so that when people engage on the issue itself, we need to look at both internal and external factors that unfortunately have made the cost of living to be as high, because the fuel crisis will also lead to the issue of cost of traveling to work, and then also the production of food, because people use diesel, petrol, and other things, and they use energy, which itself is facing its own constraints. But honorable members are free to interact, to engage robustly, and then we are here to then provide answers which are within our own mandate, and then where we're able to also explain the team is capable of doing. So with that, Chair, thank you very much for welcoming me too. And to all honorable members, I hope we'll work together collectively going forward for the interests of our people and for the interests of our country. And thank you with us. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Deputy Minister. Thank you very much for those kind words of opening and outlining and setting the scene. I now wish to, I take it that the chairperson of Eskom will then lead the Eskom delegation, and then we will take it from there. Chairperson, Datempo, asniga wena ndate. Usniga umkhombandlela.
Enkosi Sihlalo, we wish to greet you, Honorable Chairperson, and also greet our Honorable Deputy Minister. We wish to greet all the honorable members of the Select Committee on Public Enterprises and Comms. And that Bela is putting me in trouble here. I'm not a professor. I'm just Mpo Makwana. I'm joined here this morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, by the executive team from Eskom, led by Ndade Caleb Kasim, who's our acting Group Chief Executive, as well as Ndade Martin Bays, who's our acting CFO. I do convey apologies on behalf of some of my board colleagues who couldn't join, especially our chair of the Audit and Risk Committee. We may possibly be joined by one other board member later. Ms. Trifosa Ramana had indicated she might join a bit late. It's a bit of a challenge with the public holiday. Some people are already traveling to faraway places. In Pretoria, most of us who know the late Diego Moseneke, today is an important day of his burial. And I know some of us would have wanted to be there, but we are here. Duty calls us to be here. So, honorable members, we have prepared what we hope is a short but comprehensive presentation on the matter that the Deputy Minister has already alluded to of the tariffs. The dilemma that Eskom always finds itself in is that its revenue model is regulated and is tariffs based. And so it becomes a huge challenge when we face this time when we have to, initially would have gone to NERSA to engage in an application for a multi-year price determination, which culminates in the approval of the tariff. And post the approval, it is always a challenge for all South Africans, private citizens, business leaders and owners to absorb this tariff that would have been granted. We will invite our executive team to go through the model and the technical aspects of how we apply the tariff as per the invitation, and then hopefully where we need, as usual, to clarify matters through questions and answer sessions, we will then hopefully delve deeper into the subject. Let me invite Mr. Caleb Kasim to then lead the executive introduction and allocate the different members of the executive to present the requisite parts of the presentation. Over to you, Caleb.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable members, Honorable Deputy Minister, and to the Chairman of the Eskom Board. Honorable members, I'm just going to give a synopsis of what this decision was to Eskom and how beneficial it was, also appreciating what the Deputy Minister has said. It is a difficult decision and it was a tough decision for the regulator to make, taking into account the environment of, as we are all dealing with load shedding. But we do believe as Eskom that this decision made by the regulator for FY24 and 25 of the 18.6 and 12.7 decision, in conjunction with the debt relief that the Minister of Finance announced at the budget in February, has put Eskom on a much more better financial position. As we presented yesterday to the SCOA committee, we were able now for the first time in about 6 years to release capital expenditure for the next 3 years for generation, transmission, and distribution. And in our corporate plan approved by the board in March, we've made the assumption that Eskom would not only not borrow for 3 years, but we've extended that to a 5-year horizon, which shows that the combination of the debt relief as well as this tariff decision has a very positive impact on the financial situation. It then allows management now to focus on the pressing operational requirements. Top of mind is dealing with the load shedding for our country. It is also a decision that we believe that the regulator has substantially complied with the methodology. Eskom has decided we are not reviewing this decision. Members will recall the past few decisions have been reviewed by Eskom successfully. We are confident that the regulator has applied the methodology, has also taken into account key court decisions in coming up with this decision. However, you will see in our concluding slide, although tremendous strides have been made to close the gap to cost reflectivity, we believe there is a smaller portion still to continue. But importantly as well, over and above the average price increase, we need to look at the structure of the tariffs as the industry is changing. We've taken the opportunity, Honorable Chairperson and members, to put some proposals and suggestions, and we will obviously engage with the regulator within their governance structures to try to close those gaps in terms of tariff structures and the opportunities that are available to the regulator and the country for April 2024 with regard to tariffs. You will see that when we unpack, and my colleague Harsha will go through the technical details, the price increase awarded by the regulator in the 18%, a large component dealt with the fixing and the correction of the regulatory asset base that was incorrectly computed in a previous decision. That has fundamentally been rectified. That adjustment comes through. Also, we deal with the pass-through element of the IPP costs in terms of the methodology. And on a similar hand, the regulator has to understand and make a call on the timing of IPPs. So one of the reasons for the difference between what Eskom has asked for and what was awarded is the delay in IPPs coming on stream, and they have accordingly then disallowed because of a timing perspective, which will always be rectified through a regulatory clearing account. So fundamentally, we see this decision as applying the methodology. It was a very reasonable decision in tough circumstances, and it does have a very positive impact on where we are going financially to relieve the pressure and to focus on the operations. But I think most importantly, as Eskom and the industry, there is opportunities to align to the changing industry. We make suggestions on ring fencing of revenue, giving separate price increases for generation, transmission, and distribution in the future. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson and members. I'll now allow my colleague to take us through the detail. Thank you. Asha.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, and good morning, Honorable members and other Eskom and DPE representatives. Thanks very much for the opportunity. If we move to the next slide, we'll just provide you with how the National Energy Regulator of South Africa, NERSA, is guided in making its decision. It basically works in accordance with the Electricity Regulation Act as approved by Parliament, and they are the only entity, the only authority that is allowed to determine a price increase for electricity for any entity, whether it's Eskom or municipality. So that is the power they get from the Electricity Regulation Act. As far as Eskom is concerned, in determining the revenue that is allowed, they use what is called the multi-year price determination methodology. We fondly call it the MYPD. And NERSA has made a decision for financial year 24 and 25. 24 is the year that we are in at the moment. And that decision was made on the 12th of January this year. It relates to a revenue determination of 318 billion for the financial year 24 and 352 billion for financial year 25. And this translates on an average for an 18% and a 12.71% increase. Now, that is the first step in determining what Eskom should get as a revenue allowance to cover its efficient and prudent costs. Then the next step is that is a translation, and there is a particular Eskom retail tariff and structural adjustment methodology that NERSA uses that has been consulted on by NERSA, where all stakeholders had an opportunity to provide input, and that basically translates that allowable revenue into particular tariffs. And then on the 10th of March of this year, NERSA determined that, and that goes into a little bit more detail. This is done on an annual basis, so sometime during 2024, the decision will be made for the next year. If we go to the next slide, this here is a high-level summary of what the decision was. I'm just going to point to a few of the decision points. Just to orientate, we have both years, financial year 24 and 25 on the screen, and then we show the previous year's NERSA decision as well. The blue part refers to the Eskom application, the NERSA adjustment, and then the NERSA decision. I think an important point to note is the regulatory asset base that was determined in the financial year 2023 was found to be incorrectly applied as far as the methodology is concerned, and then this was one of the decisions that was reviewed by Eskom, and NERSA and Eskom basically settled out of court on what a joint order on or what that should be. And therefore you see a significant increase, almost a doubling of what the regulatory asset base should have been for financial year 2024. And then I think the other important point, as mentioned by the Chief Executive, that we are still migrating towards the cost reflective level, and the weighted average cost of capital, the WACC, that is being used as a return on assets is about 1% or 1.7% in each of the years. And that is, it's supposed to reflect the level of how much it will cost to basically borrow the money that Eskom is required to fund. And that is NERSA has determined to be in the region of 10%. So even when Eskom makes its application, it is making an application to allow for this migration and therefore to minimize the impact on all consumers. So this has been a migratory part for a few years, and that is one of the areas where the gap needs to be further closed in subsequent years. So related to that and the regulatory asset base, you would see that return significantly increased from the previous year, but it is a bit lower than what Eskom had applied for. Then we go down to the operating costs. NERSA has disallowed certain areas of operating costs, mainly related to employee benefits and other operating costs, and it felt that these were not prudent. But again, as mentioned, there will be an opportunity in the regulatory clearing account when the reconciliation after the financial year to determine what actually was the correct number that could have been allowed. Then we go to primary energy. there is a significant disallowance by NERSA in what Eskom had applied for. And the key reasons for this is that Eskom had required a load factor, or using the diesel-powered open-cycle gas turbines to an extent of about 12% load factor, and NERSA has determined it to be a 6% load factor. So that particular gap, as far as being able to meet the energy, will need to be debated as to how that is going to be met. Then we go to the IPPs, which are the independent power producers. As mentioned by the GCE, many of those programs did not come online or will not come online during this financial year as originally anticipated, and therefore that is an acceptable disallowance because that energy would not need to be paid for. And then we go to the depreciation, which there's just been a slight difference in what Eskom has applied for. Look at the bottom of the slide, the first total is a recovery of the government injection as per a court order. So this was a different court order. Sorry. Okay. So I think.
And when you maybe I need to look out and go in again.
Sorry, I think I'm being interrupted.
Sorry, Honorable Chair, we don't know how to proceed.
Okay, I think, all right, we're fine now. So in the financial years 2020 to 2022 was where there was a government injection of equity provided of 23 billion each year. And in those 3 years, NERSA incorrectly deducted 23 billion rands for each year from the return on assets component, and then through a subsequent court order that was actually reversed, and there was another court-ordered settlement where basically this would be recovered over financial years, mainly between 24 to 27, and 10 billion of that has been recovered in financial year 2022. So that accounts for that 15 billion where we refer to the government injection as per court order. So there is that recovery that is happening, that is also contributing towards the price increase, which was disallowed incorrectly in the previous years. And there is a gap of about at least 5 years between that. If we go to the next slide, this basically is a similar kind of reflection. It just shows various increases in this similar revenue item. But I think the main point that we need to draw out over here is that if we look at each one of these, there are many that are contractual agreements. For example, in the IPP's case, these are contractual agreements that are not directly under the control of Eskom. So it's not significant much to do with Eskom's operation situation, but it is a contractual agreement that needs to be paid. Similarly for international purchases. And then if you look at the primary energy component, if we remove the diesel part, which is obviously, as explained, there has been a significant increase in the use of open cycle gas turbine, basically minimize the load shedding, and that is why there is a 623% increase in NERSA's decision. But if we remove that part from the rest of the primary energy, is basically just a 5% increase from the previous decision. So they just shows that as far as especially the coal costs, etc., in this instance, there was some kind of stability, and it is something that Eskom is basically, again, has contractual agreements to be had to deal with. Again, in the operating costs, if you just go above a bit on the table, NERSA has actually dropped by 8% from its previous decision, and this is mainly related to the employee benefits and other operating costs. And I think the other point to draw your attention to is the depreciation. Because of the change in the regulatory asset base, the depreciation amount also increases from the previous year, and this is subject court order as well. So the key point to draw out here is that it is difficult for NERSA to make a decision because there are so many commitments and contractual requirements that need to be met to be able to provide the electricity, and there is very little room for movement, and that is why focus is given to the return on assets or the weighted average cost of capital that allows for the migration towards further cost effectivity. If we go to the next slide. Again, this shows, if you just look at financial year 2024, out of the 32%, sorry, the 18.65% increase, 10.4% was related to depreciation, and that is because of the correction of the regulatory asset base from the previous year. If that incorrectness didn't occur in the previous year, we would not have seen such a significant increase. And then in the orange color, 5.21% is, although there was 10 billion rands of IPP costs that were disallowed, there is still a significant increase in IPP when we compare to the previous financial year of 2023. And so there is that increase. And then the blue is the 3.1% of the 18.65 is contributed to by primary energy. And again, this is mainly, the increase is mainly due to the use of additional diesel to try and avoid load shedding. If we go to the next slide. So in summary, I think a lot of this has been mentioned by the GCE, is that we will not undertake a judicial review. NERSA has significantly implemented the methodology, and the key contributors to the increase are the depreciation, the IPPs, and the primary energy costs. But it is also noted that there were understandable key disallowances, and this is mainly due to the IPP. And then basically, as far as the diesel costs are concerned, we understand that there is this motivation for Eskom to improve the performance of its coal-fired power stations, and therefore NERSA has tempered the allowance of the diesel costs. So in a way that might be understandable. But also, I think importantly to point out, there is some kind of stability experience as far as both Eskom's application and the NERSA decision on the employee benefit. And we do see a slight decrease in the first year and then a subsequent increase. If we go to the next slide, this basically summarizes the NERSA decision. It shows the 18.65% increase and the 12.74% increase in the subsequent year. But I think the details are in the next slide, where NERSA made its more detailed decision. If we move to the next slide. Yes, I think it's important to point out that the Eskom tariff on an average was 18.65%, and that on an average is what is applied to all of Eskom customers, but there is a particular process that is used to determine what the municipal increase would be, and in this instance, it was an average of 18.49. Just to point out that NERSA will need to now approve each of the municipal tariffs before they can be implemented, and they are implemented on the 1st of July each year in terms of the Municipal Finance Management Act. But I think the other point to point out is in Home Light 20 amps, if you look at the lower part of the slide, where NERSA has the ability to decide to allow some kind of a cross subsidy, and that is what it has done, allowing, instead of an 18.65% increase to these Home Light 20 amp customers who are basically the poor residential customers, has allowed them a 10% increase and not an 18.65. And that difference basically it forms part, adds to what is in the affordability subsidy, and therefore that affordability subsidy increased by about 29%, and that resulted in certain Eskom customers having to pay about a 0.5% further increase than the average would have reflected. And that is the way NERSA has tried to soften the blow on the poor residential customers. And this has been done in the past, but this time there has been a significant decrease in the difference as well. If we move to the next slide, I think this is, and mentioned by the GCE, the way to look forward is that there is an opportunity in April 2020 for implementation in April 24 for NERSA to look at the tariff adjustments that Eskom has submitted again. So this is not at the revenue level, but at the detailed tariff level. And then this will, Eskom has made submissions and NERSA has consulted on them. It is now for NERSA to make further decisions. There was some decisions made for implementation from April 2023, but there is room for further decisions. And these will basically allow for the modernization of the supply to reflect the changes in the environment and then to reflect costs more accurately, and also to allow for further transparency and to allow for the ring fencing or the unbundling of the additional costs so that those are more reflected at a tariff level than they are presently. Again, this is a migratory route and it needs to be considered as well. This does not result in any further increase in revenue, but it just results in a more correct allocation at a tariff level. And then we also need to start preparing for financial year 2026. Keep in mind the whole revenue application process from the time that Eskom starts with preparation and when NERSA makes its decision or when the implementation happens is approximately 2 years. So we are almost ready for the next revenue cycle at the moment. And we do have a recognized NYPD methodology, which is world renowned. And it does allow for recovery of efficient and prudent costs. And as mentioned, this is an area where we have to now we have dealt with many of the cost items, but we need to deal, especially with return on assets, to be able to move towards more cost reflective of an efficient level of providing electricity. And again, innovation which is allowed within the methodology, we're making sure to deal with further unbundling, to deal with ring fence revenue for generation, transmission, and distribution. If we go to the last slide, which is a summary slide, just to look at key progress towards Eskom's financial sustainability, looking at it more broadly than just tariffs. As mentioned and has been discussed at the SCOA meeting yesterday, debt relief has provided much more stability for Eskom's sustainability, and cost reflectivity is significant, and therefore the orange robot, where there is significant progress being made, but then again on the return on assets is where further closing of the gap is required. As far as the operational efficiency matters, NERSA has provided for all of maintenance costs in this particular application. There were some disallowances for other operating expenses, and these issues need to be looked at to try and understand what the reasoning behind that was, and maybe to be able to close that gap. And as noted, and also in SCOA, that the municipal recovery of debt that's owed by municipalities to Eskom is that the way that NERSA makes its decision, it does not allow for any arrear debts, and therefore it's incumbent upon Eskom to basically deal with any of those arrear debts that are not recovered. And we know that the National Treasury has come up with the circular as part of debt support conditions, and there is a process, but it is still new. And I think the municipalities, National Treasury, and Eskom are trying to understand how that will happen, how it will be implemented, and then hopefully there will be some progress in narrowing that gap. And all of these basically contribute to the financial sustainability of Eskom. I'll stop there. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Just to circle back, Caleb, Martin, and other executives, is there anything to add before we open it back to the chair of the committee?
Chief, from my side, I'm covered.
Chair, good morning to everybody. I've got nothing to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Chair, firstly, Honorable Deputy Minister Ndadwa Pele, perhaps we should hand back to you to do any further comments you may wish to add before you then hand back to the Honorable Mkiva, the chair of our committee.
No, there's nothing to add, and I think one will be guided by the questions raised. There will be those that are obviously technical, and the technical team is here to deal with them. And then if there might be any policy matter, then obviously I will come in and assist in the responses together with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We wish to hand back to you, sir, Honorable Chairperson.
Well, thank you very much for that presentation. And thank you, Chairperson of the board, and thank you, DM, as well as the officials. Let me now give the honorable members a chance to have a bite by way of posing questions of clarity, as well as even comments will be acceptable. Honorable members, I will recognize you when you raise your hands. If a member has a technical challenge, the member will just indicate. I would like to ask the Secretariat to assist me in identifying the members that are raising their hands. I see Honorable Tebucho Modise, Honorable Winnie Ngwenya. I only see those two hands at the moment. I only see those two hands at the moment.
Panini, will you also note me?
Okay, you are noted, Honorable Nana.
Thank you.
So at this point, I only have those three hands. In that order, honorable members, Honorable Tebucho Modise, Honorable Ngwenya, and Honorable Nana. You can go ahead, Honorable Tebucho Modise. Can you unmute? Your microphone is muted. Go ahead. You are still on mute, honorable member.
Excuse me, Chair. I think she's having problems with network because the microphone is unmuted.
Okay, Honorable Modise, can you switch off your camera and just leave on the microphone just to check if that will help us in terms of your connectivity? We still can't hear Honorable Modise. What we'll do, Honorable Modise, we'll come back to you. Let's take the input from Honorable Ngwenya. We will come back to you. We'll try to resolve your problem in the meantime. Honorable Ngwenya. Honorable Ngwenya, we give the opportunity to you now.
Good morning, Chair. Can you hear me?
We can hear you clearly. Go ahead, Honorable One.
Asibonge Sihlalo. Mbingelele namalunga onke eParliament nomhlonishwa wethu ubaba obethi Bapela nethimba lakhe ahambisana nalo. Chairperson, I've got few questions that I'm going to ask. My question are as follow. I want to check that are the tariffs increase law by international standards. Have you conducted an international standard, especially in the African continent, to compare your tariff increase with your international counterparts? Can we get an international perspective? The second question, Chair, I wanted to check that does the tariff increase of electricity play a role in influence the public, especially the poor of the poorest and the lower income household who are more vulnerable to the tariff increase, to look for alternative source of the electricity? If yes, what other affordable alternative source of electricity which Eskom can advise the poor communities to explore? My last question, Chairperson, I want to check, does the load shedding have an impact on Eskom sales of electricity? If yes, does it play a role in influence your decision to increase tariffs? And what extent has it affect your decision to increase electricity prices? Thank you, Chairperson. I'll come up with the follow-up question if there is a need or time to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Ngwenya, for your questions. And Honorable Mlindindana, can we give you the platform now? Please switch on your camera, Honorable Nana.
It's going to be a bit of a problem, Chairperson, because of my signal is a bit unstable. I can assure. No, I can assure you. Maybe let me do this quickly. Here I am, Chair.
Okay, sure.
At least no one hlambile ndawabrusha namazinyo.
Okay,
Chairperson, thank you very much, and good morning to everyone in the meeting. My first question goes to the Deputy Minister. South Africans had a bit of I'm looking for a right English word. I think it's called a reprieve. South Africans had a bit of a reprieve when the president persuaded Eskom to hold back on implementing the tariff hikes. Now the eventuality is going to obtain, it is very clear. Eskom will go ahead and implement the tariff increase. Is government having a plan to mitigate the devastating effect this will surely have, particularly to the poorest of the poor, as Honorable Ngwenya has mentioned? Has government thought of a plan to try and cushion the most destitute in our country? Secondly, to Eskom, I would like to invite your comment. One of the industry experts argued that Eskom has asked for the tariff hike so as for Eskom to pay its debts. And he further argues that Eskom cannot try find a way out of its debts by pressing the already hard-pressed consumers. I would want to get a comment from Eskom in this regard. As I said, I mean, some experts are arguing that the the primary reason for this steep increase is really for Eskom to get themselves out of debt. And secondly, to Eskom, Chairperson, when I first heard of this price increase, I thought it was an April Fool's joke. I would want to ask Eskom, how do they explain to South Africans, whilst as a country we are experiencing the most severest of load shedding, Eskom wants to increase prices? Is this not fly on the faces of South Africans? Is this not adding salt to injury? Because let's face it, honorable members, and I will actually put it to Eskom, that Eskom has failed in its mandate to generate and distribute energy for the country. Now, having failed, they slap South Africans with such a huge increase. Thank you, Chairperson. I will await their responses. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Nana. We now give the opportunity to Honorable Modise. Let's get another attempt for you, Honorable Modise.
No, thank you very much, Chair. I hope now my problem has been solved. Let me start by greeting you, Honorable Chair, and greet the Honorable Deputy Minister and Chair of the Board, and also my colleagues and all members from the board. Chair, I had 3 questions, but the other one covered by 2 speakers. My first question is, Honorable Chair, few years ago, there were reports that Eskom signed long-term with electricity deals with mining houses and industries in the customers. What were very, very, very cheaper compared to the general public? Some deals were signed before our democracy deputy minister. These deals are still existing? If yes, what justifies their existence? See, you compare our public, they were buying at a high price, and then the mining houses and the industrial customers were buying at the cheapest one. So I'm just want to know whether these are still existing. Well, number 2, but I think that one more or less covered, but let me start to put it like this. Will this money recover from the tariff increase enable Eskom to return to services mother-built power station, so to easier the rate of rolling blackouts? Those are the only 2 questions that I had, Chair.
No, thank you, Honorable Modise, for those questions. Let me also just ask a few questions. And some questions will be related to the tariff increases, but others will be related to urgent matters which we think they require the attention and consideration of Eskom. Given the fact that, for instance, we are approaching winter, I just want to check if Eskom has taken any measures to mitigate load shedding during winter. That's the first question. The second question is in relation to the alleged sabotage, which is said to be taking place in some of the power stations. Has a proper investigation been done on these allegations, including theft and fraud, which is affecting the performance of the utility? And what is happening as well to the 25 people arrested early this year for the same, that is for the allegations on sabotage, theft, and fraud? Besides strengthening the utilities balance sheet, how the 256 billion from the National Treasury will assist Eskom to carry out the energy mix policy of government in order to ensure that we actually get out of the quagmire of load shedding, which is really affecting people's life. The fourth question is in relation to a statement which has been made by some of our leaders at some quarters in respect of the old debts, particularly those that flow from the townships. Some of those debts predates the new dispensation. There was then a call, for instance, for the scrapping of those debts in order to have a fresh start, which would ensure that Eskom begins to see money flowing, where you would have a special instrument which would ensure that people, when they begin from scratch, perhaps if you apply a pay-as-you-go method, you would then have monies that are accrued from that, where all the households would at least be paying. Because there is suggestion that the old debt make a scenario of an accumulation of that debt, and people still continue not to pay because of the method that is used. Can you shed light whether this is feasible to be done, or whether this is the best option? If not, what then becomes the alternative? Let's leave it at that, Deputy Minister, and allow you to tackle the questions together with the chairperson and the management. We now give you the opportunity to answer the questions.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me start so that then the majority of other questions will be dealt with by Eskom team, as some are technical and also directed to Eskom in its operation and mandate. Chair, there are two issues that are arising. Let me start with the one that we have just recently raised, which is the old debt. After the 1994 democratic breakthrough, there was a lobby and engagement around the then debt to be scrapped. And over a period of time, with the ushering of the new democratic dispensation of the municipalities, which came in 1996, there was indeed the scrapping of the debt by quite a number of municipalities across the country. And what we are now seeing is a new debt that has accumulated to almost 23 billion rand as we speak now. And the old debt that was scrapped then was coming from the old system that we come from of apartheid, and with a view that will also encourage our people to pay for the services. And quite a number of programs were started, Operation Masakane, you remember, the late minister Sicelo Shiteka, campaigning going across the country around that because of the scraping that has occurred, but also to try and introduce a culture of payment of services. But since then, we are now on the 29th year of our democracy. It might have happened the 5 years of the new democracy. So 24 years thereafter, unfortunately, a new debt started accumulating. And that's where we are now, with the 23 billion rands that is owed by the municipalities to Eskom. There is, Salga has tried since the past 2-3 years to lobby for the scrapping of the debt, but the question that comes from Treasury, if you scrap it, money must come from somewhere. So where will that money come from? We don't have that money. There are so many needs in the country, and therefore the issue, if you then tell us where is the money that is going to be scrapping, because somebody is being owed. It's not just easy just to say it's gone, it's over. It means if the budget allows, it means that budget, the fiscals must then bring in that money into the system. And where will that money come from? And I think that debate has not been concluded. So many meetings have been arranged to engage on it by the immediate former Deputy President, David Mabuza, with Eskom, part of it with management and everybody, and certain departments that were selected to be part of the talks. And at the time, I was still the Deputy Minister of Culture, so that is why it's as fresh as that. So there's been no conclusion as yet, but it keeps coming up on the agenda for revisiting, and but up to now, there's no decision of the scrapping of the debt. And then there's a debt owed by government department, by government in general, provincial governments, national governments, provincial governments and national government representing schools, hospitals, clinics, and also their departmental offices, headquarters and provincial headquarters and any other. That is another debt that is owed to Eskom. On that one, there's a task team that was established under the then Minister of Public Works, Minister Delile, who then was leading a task to ensure that all departments comply and pay municipalities whatever is due to the municipality, because in that 23 billion rand, there is money that is owed by government departments, also in billions of rands, besides the households and besides the private sector. And she was already almost halfway, where quite a number of the departments were now beginning to be responsive, and if they are not responding, they needed to give reasons why, because municipalities says you also owe us and you want to punish us. And then some municipalities started punishing certain departments. In the Free State, I remember when the municipality switched off clinics and schools, and you know what will happen with switching off a clinic is a life matter, and quite a number of them started really responding as a way of, and SALGA still reserves that tool to say, government, if you don't move on reducing your debt, will end up also then switching off. And there are those discussions that also took place. Some of the departments started complaining that the municipalities' billing system is a challenge. Why they are not paying, they have been overcharged. And some of the inquiries that they follow up, they are not responded to adequately. So one, I'm in dispute, I can't pay. And this becomes a perpetual dispute, because if the municipality is not able to give answers to that department that is querying a bill, even the households, some of them that wants to pay, they have billing queries that are there. So the billing system generally in the municipalities is still a challenge. Some are doing well and some are not doing well in that particular context. So therefore the issue of the debt scraping, it has combinations of those that can afford to pay and be obligated, including government departments, but then there are the poorest of the poor that obviously are loaded on this particular issue of the debt that is there to municipality and to Eskom. But otherwise, the discussion has not yet concluded. And I might just say, probably with a new deputy president and us as DPE also being part of the IMC that is chaired by the deputy president, Paul Mashatile, we'll have to raise it to say, well, how are we following up on this matter, which is still pending as part of the tasks that are assigned to the deputy president. And And therefore, I just want to leave it to say it's not yet resolved. It is on the agenda. There are quite a number of issues then that comes in, billing being one, those who can afford to do. And then therefore the scrapping has not yet been concluded. And then Treasury obviously asking that question, where will the money come from? Then in terms of the poorest of the poor, now being burdened by the increases by Eskom, as you know that there's a program for the indigent in all municipalities, which is a budget available and accessible to municipalities who have a good indigent program with all the residents registered to be exempted from a certain figure of services that they ought to pay, be it electricity, water, and then others by the municipalities. That indigent policy is still in place, and there's billions of rands. I'm not sure of the figure now. And I did come to Parliament last year as a deputy minister. I think it was the NCOP, the select committee that is led by Honorable Dodovin, I think select committee on local government and something, where we were able to give a comprehensive report in terms of how much and then how it will help relieve the poorest of the poor. And that package is still a package available. What is not happening, unfortunately, is the municipalities are not updating their records. There are new people who have lost jobs recently due to COVID and other losses of jobs. And then there are those who have gained jobs within that system. And then they are not updating it. They are waiting for people to come to them. And the awareness is not as greatly dispensed across the residences to say, if you are now an indigent and can no longer afford to pay for certain municipal services, please come and register. And with that register, they then can claim the money that is there and available in the system, and they know how to do about that. But the records are going down instead of going up, and yet we can see the population of indigents growing generally. And that is the package that the government then has to offset any increments that Eskom might be having, and that might affect the poorest of the poor. That amount of money remains available. Most of the time is not being spent to the maximum because the indigents registered from the 257 municipalities, 204 municipalities, because it's local municipalities that must do, minus the 44 districts. They are not compliant to it, and therefore we encourage them to really go on an offensive campaign, remind people that they need to go to the municipalities or do door-to-door, visit people in their communities, in the villages, in the township, and say, are you indeed an indigent qualifying resident? If so, here is the money, it's available. Treasury is not complaining that there's not more money, because every year that money is not fully being spent. And I think that is the pushing that the government has for their residents, even when they are despite the increment by Eskom. So that's how I'll then respond to the issues. And some of you, you were mayors in municipalities in this platform, and you know about it, but not everybody is in the indigent register of the municipality. I think municipality must really take it up to pushing, as you are now saying, that let the poor people not suffer further, and that question is there as a package by government. Thank you, Chairperson. I think the rest of the questions I leave to Eskom.
With your permission, Honorable Chair, I would like to then ask my executive colleagues to respond to the questions. If I can ask between you, Caleb, and Martin to go a little bit into detail into how Eskom earns its revenue relative to the tariffs, how the tariff model works, as you explain, as you answer the rest of the questions as set out. May I hand over to you, Caleb, and executive colleagues?
Thank you, Chair.
Perhaps let me deal with the one question that we can dispense with quickly on the winter plan. The board and the executive have been engaged in various deliberations to see how we can ameliorate exposing South Africa to a tough winter. We remain in consultation with various key players, such as the NECOM, our own Ministry of Public Enterprises, and the Ministry of Electricity. And Honorable Chair, as soon as those consultations are done, we should be able to communicate to the country. Thank you, Caleb.
Thank you to you, Honorable Chairperson. I'll start and my colleagues will come in. I think, firstly, to Honorable Ngwenia's question around, have we benchmarked Eskom's tariffs or South Africa's tariffs relative to international peers, as well as the African continent? We have done that. We all make available those reports to the committees. And what we found that Eskom and South Africa's tariffs are still very competitive with global benchmarks. I think an important element when we look at benchmarking, sometimes there are subsidies from the government, which then mask the overall price that consumers are paying. But in the work and the studies that we have available to us as Eskom, which we've conducted, we found that Eskom's and South African prices still remain competitive. I think with regard to the second question, how do you protect the poor? I think the Honorable Deputy Minister has addressed that quite a bit. I think what is important for the country as well, like my colleague Asha has mentioned, that when you protect a certain category and vulnerable sector of customers, whilst the overall cost must still be paid and recovered from the entire population, it does mean that some of the other category of customers picks up this additional cost. I think a way forward to address that for the country, we need to have a very clear cross-subsidy framework, obviously a government policy-led initiative that states the framework around that and how it will be dealt with. I think that will give much more clarity going forward from a country perspective. There are mechanisms to protect that were announced from DMRE in terms of industrial customers, short-term and long-term. But I think over and above the free basic electricity, in our experience, we think there's a need for a clear cross-subsidy framework around that. The third question, Honorable Ngwenia, around does Eskom take load shedding into account in terms of tariffs? When we make our application to the regulator, we run what we call what we can produce. And the combination of Eskom's plants plus IPPs and imports, we look to meet the demand. Obviously, as a last factor, we utilize quite a bit of OCGTs. And in our application to the regulator, we've made an assumption of a 12% load factor on OCGTs. And the regulator has allowed for a 6% load factor, obviously keeping the pressure on Eskom to improve its EAF performance. But more importantly, when we do a regulatory clearing account after the event of load shedding that has happened, we take an adjustment for that. We don't expect, and we have not submitted for the consumers to pay for any lost sales that are linked to load shedding. We have not done that, and that's the principle embedded in the MYPD methodology. If I then look at Honorable Nana's question around the industry expert, is the price increase only there to pay for our debts? No, it's there to pay for our operating costs, being your primary energy, plus your ops and maintenance, as well as then getting a return on your assets in terms of that methodology. One, it has to be the correct regulatory asset base as defined by the methodology, and then that fair return that is determined by the regulator. Even the regulator is targeted cost of capital is around 9%, whereas the amount that is allowed to be recovered in these tariffs is probably sitting around 1.7%. So there is a gap to go. I think importantly, if I can just add to that, as highlighted in our final slide, for Eskom to remove itself from being a burden on the fiscus and not asking for further bailouts going forward, it's a four-pronged approach for Eskom's financial sustainability. One is the cost-reflective tariff, and we believe we've made a massive step in the right direction. Two was a debt relief to delever the balance sheet, which we have done now by this recent decision by the Minister of Finance. Three, as Eskom, we need to be efficient as an operator and a licensee. Yes, and there's a lot of, we've done a lot, but there's more room to do around our efficiencies as Eskom. We acknowledge that. And then the last one, in terms of the financial sustainability, is the challenge that we currently remains, as the Deputy Minister has alluded to, is that collections and improving the collection rates from municipalities. We know National Treasury has issued this circular and an incentive to the munis now as part of the debt relief. If they pay their current account, then Eskom will write off the historical municipal arrears over a 3-year horizon. If I didn't deal with the price increase and how do we explain that to South Africans, I think one of the things we have seen, and it's unfortunate that the time of the application is when we are struggling with load shedding and these high stages. But at the end of the day, we also need certainty around how we're gonna pay for our operating costs, in particular, the outages that are spares in advance, but more importantly, also to strengthen and expand the distribution and the transmission networks. So what does this price increase allow? One, it allows us to deal with the operating costs. The positive step, NERSA has increased the percentage of load factor allowance on the diesel from a previous 3% to 6%. We are still budgeting for 12%, which we have to finance through a portion of the cash generated from operations. But more importantly, I think we must not underestimate the importance of getting the transmission grid expanded as quick as possible so we can connect those IPPs and the other capacity that comes online. We must be very wary that transmission, we've already seen in bid window 5 becoming a constraint. So unlocking the transmission grid is key to ensuring a much more stable and security of supply of electricity to the country. We do believe that this decision and the debt relief goes a long way, but it does also take some time to fix the old plants, get them to perform, and then those long outages, Kusile Unit 1, 2, and 3, and Kuberg, it's going to take a few months to bring onto the grid to deal with the supply and demand balance. I think to Honorable Modise, is it going to ease rolling blackouts? No, not in the short term, but we believe it puts us on the path to addressing the key issues going forward. Over and above the money issue, it then allows, frees up management's time to not stress about raising money in the markets to meet debt service commitments. We now can focus on the operations and the people and the processes within Eskom. With regard to the alleged the sabotage and the 25 people, Honorable Chairperson, the feedback I have from our head of security is many of those cases are pending trial. No one has been convicted yet, and some cases have been withdrawn. I mentioned the benefits above the deleveraging of the balance sheet. What does the debt relief do for Eskom? And the Honorable Minister, Deputy Ministers touched on the old debts. I'll ask Martin to elaborate on the revenues and Harsha, and then maybe to you, Honorable Chairperson, I'll ask Monde Bala to deal with some of the special pricing agreements that Honorable Modise asked that currently exist. Thank you. Martin and then Harsha and then Monde.
Okay, good morning, Honorable Chairman and Honorable Deputy Minister and all the other honorable members of the committee, as well as the members of EXCO and other people as well in the meeting. So from an Eskom perspective, like any business, you basically have got three pockets of where you can get funding from. And the one is, first of all, your revenue stream itself. And as Caleb has identified, the revenue stream is really there that you should be able to cover your operating costs, plus you need to cover some kind of a return on your assets. And then the next revenue stream is that you can borrow money from the external market, or your shareholder can put money into your business. So at this point in time, why the 254 billion bailout was necessary is because Eskom's balance sheet at this point in time could not carry the burden anymore. And so the only two options now is for the shareholder, or the only option available was for the shareholder to put money into Eskom. So that is dealing with the revenue side. And as Harsha has explained to us, that the revenue is determined by the regulator, and that the regulator follows a formula in determining the revenue, which is a very basic formula consisting of operating cost, primary energy, your depreciation, and then your return on your assets. And that is outside of Eskom's control. Harsha, I'm not sure if you want to add anything.
Thank you. I think one question that was not fully addressed is, what are the sort of initiatives that the government has provided as far as protecting the poor residential customer is concerned? And just to put that in a collective bucket, is that first of all, there is the connection to the electrification program that is being undertaken, and it's still continuing. And obviously that is a government initiative. Even though Eskom might be undertaking it, it is certain parts of it is project managed only, and the funding comes from government. So there is a substantial amount of sort of funding put into that. Then there is the inclining block tariff. No, sorry, before we get to the inclining block tariff, there is the free basic electricity of 50 kilowatt hours per month that poor residential customers receive. And in certain municipalities, they actually increase it to 100 kilowatt hours per month. Then there is the inclining block tariff, so that the first batch of electricity that is used will be at a cheaper rate, and only when the residents go at higher rate, that you would be paying more. And what we find for our residential customers, that most of them utilize actually less than 100 kilowatt hours a month. That is because they do have very few electricity linked kind of appliances. And then, as mentioned also, is that in this particular instance, there is a further subsidy that has been provided as far as the poor residential customers by NERSA in its recent decision, where they will not see this particular full increase. But also, I think look at it more holistically, is that many residential customers get electricity from municipalities, and there is a differentiation between what Eskom's tariffs are and what municipality tariffs are. And I think in our research, we do find that there is quite a differential, and that is another area of focus. And there has been a recent court case where it was basically incumbent upon NERSA to ensure that it makes sure that the tariff that the municipalities charge must be more based on the cost to supply those particular customers. At the moment, it is just a benchmark increase that is provided. So I think besides the Eskom supplied customers, we also need to think about the municipal supplied customers, and we do feel that more work is needed there. Thank you very much.
Chairperson, if I can come in again, I just forgot one point from Honorable Nhanha, that yes, the President did express for a relief and suspension of the implementation at the time, and which you said you were quite excited, but unfortunately later got disappointed. In law, President had no space to really begin to challenge the positions of an independent body such as NERSA. However, it was just a human wish, and that with this situation that I've described in my opening remarks of the high cost of living and the environment that we find ourselves globally and in the country, probably a suspension for a later implementation would be the way to, but obviously based on advice legally, and otherwise it was found that an independent body has made a pronouncement and has agreed to then give in phases the increment. But I think I've answered the issue of the cushioning of the poor in that way, and some of the technical elements have been responded to by Eskom, and I hope therefore that it does then answer your question that legally the President cannot, once there's a pronouncement by one of the independent. These are how the architect of our democracy, which we have all adopted and agreed to, is with those institutions that are as independent and they can then pronounce this way or that way. We have to live with it. But the question, and luckily, is still there. It's just a question of encouraging municipalities really to push people to the indigency, because the money is there and money is available, but most of the time it's just sitting and waiting for applications. Thank you.
Honorable Chairperson, I think just Monde Bala to deal with the special agreement question. Monde, through you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thanks, Caleb. Good morning, Chair. Just on the special pricing agreements. This framework is done in line with the policy pronouncement by the Department of Trade and Industry, the TTIC, who develop a specifically looking at strategic sectors of the economy. So we do have some of these special pricing arrangements, but there is a process that culminates with the regulator having to approve whatever rate that that particular entity would be paying for a pay unit. So we process those. We take them through the process, submit them to the regulator for approval. So all of those pricing arrangements are approved by the regulator. So we are in the process of evaluating a couple of more. Obviously, again the trade and industry would then make a determination to say that this particular within this to process this application and take it through the normal process that would then be approved. Yes, I hope it covers.
Thanks, Monachi. I'll hand back to you.
Thank you, Caleb, and executive colleagues. Honorable Chair, we hope we've covered all the questions raised. In the event that we may have missed any of the questions, you will hopefully assist us, but we hand back to you. I don't know if Honorable Bapela, Honorable DM may have other things, but we hand back to you and the Honorable Deputy Minister.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson. We are thankful to the answers, and we know that some of these matters will not be exhausted today, but I think that we would want to check with the members if they want to have a second bite, particularly because we have also been joined by Honorable Bibi from KZN, as she had apologized upfront. And
No.
Yeah, yes.
I must have missed part of your comments. Were you inviting a second bite?
Yeah, we're going to have that.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Not just for the sake of it, though. Where there is a need, or if a member sees that the question has not been answered in a manner that is satisfactory, so we can have a second bite. We still have a little bit of time. I see that we have the hand of Honorable Lindiwe, BB, and as I had indicated,
please note
that.
me as well, sir.
Come again?
Will you please note my hand as well? Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Nana. Please raise your hand, Honorable Nana, so that I can note it. But you are noted. So I will now give the opportunity to Honorable Lindiwe BB to raise her questions. Honorable Member, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Sorry about that. I've got a terrible flu, Chairperson. But pardon me, Chairperson, I've got two questions. Two questions with me. The first one is, does Eskom application for tariff increases take into consideration the availability of free basic electricity to qualify households, and whether this free basic also increases in accordance with inflation? And the second one, Chairperson, oh my word, sorry about that. Second question, what is the impact of cable theft and illegal connection on Eskom's finances, and whether this has also an impact on the application for the tariff increases? Sorry about that, Chairperson, and also not putting on my video. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Honorable BB. Awukuhlangane nomhlonyane kwelo cala uzoba semcimbini.
Ngizokwenza njalo mhlekazi.
Thank you, Honorable. Let's now give the opportunity to Honorable Nana to have a second bite. Honorable Nana.
Yeah, thanks, Chairperson, for your indulgence. Probably I am to blame. I did not expand on my question to the Deputy Minister enough.
Honorable Nana.
I do accept that. Yes, Chairperson.
I hope that you have been heard, because there was a time where you disappeared. Can you start from the beginning? Can you stay where you are and stop moving so that we can hear you?
Okay, cool.
From the beginning, Honorable Nana.
That's okay, Chairperson. So, Chairperson, what I was saying, probably I am to blame. I could have expanded a bit on the question that I was asking the Deputy Minister. Really, and I accept his explanation insofar as indigent people are concerned. But really, the bracket that I wanted to focus on, you will know, Chairperson, that in the indigent policy, household has got to earn so much, and if they earn below a certain amount, they then qualify for indigent funding. But if they are above that threshold, they do not qualify. All of us in this meeting, and the Deputy Minister in his opening remarks mentioned the high cost of living, the inflation, partly exacerbated by the situation in Russia and so forth. And so forth. Now, the people I was trying to speak to, Chairperson, is a working class family. They earn more than the indigent threshold amount as per household. But the difficulty is that working class families, in as much as they earn more than the threshold amount, the value of their income is diminishing because of the cost because of the high cost of living. And my question really, I was trying to get a response from the Deputy Minister as to what mitigating plans are in place to try and protect that. I mean, those kind of people. Thanks, Chairman.
No, thank you, Honorable Nana. Maybe sometimes, Chairperson and Deputy Minister, we take some things for granted. I think given the state of things that are happening in other state-owned enterprises or companies, we wait until it's too late to ask the question. There are people who are suggesting, for instance, that we may not be surprised if the total collapse of the grid will happen. Really, is this something that we can envisage and expect to happen? Are you able, Chairperson, to give us an assurance that that is far-fetched from reality? It's not something that we should even have nightmares or sleepless nights about. True. And then the other one, Chair, again, in line with issues of not taking matters for granted. Can you give us and the nation an assurance that the financial health status of Eskom is in good standing in spite of all the challenges related to load shedding? You are not on the brink of telling us in the near future that you don't have money to buy coal, to buy diesel, and other related essentials, which ensures that we keep the lights on. Can you just give us that assurance on those two matters? We will now hand over to you, Deputy Minister, as well as the board chairperson and management.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson, and for the really useful questions that were raised by members and the concerns that honorable members have about the poor of the poorest and the poor, and we also take note of the emphasis of efficiency and security of energy, which work is being done, so that at some point as a country we can, be beyond the current situation as it dictates. Though the issues here were about the increment, but obviously you also took advantage, correctly so and rightfully, to express, the issues of security of energy, and but likely I think that program is now known, and we'll just have to make sure that it's implemented and we're able to achieve the objective. The increment obviously are hitting, and I hope honorable members with the cushioning that they were asking if there's any. I think we adequately dealt with that issue. And the benchmarking international and in Africa, probably in the next appearances will be able to give a better table. Probably it was just a spare of remarks that were said here, but it will also begin to tell us of the third world countries who is more expensive tariffs, but obviously situations differ from one country to the other. Even if we have done that benchmarking, ours is to really ensure that we do not hurt too much the poor, but you'll also see that the electricity price in South Africa is not as bad, but the cost of producing is also something that cannot be undermined, because the cost elements then dictate the price offer at given points. Should we have abundance of other use and the mix of energies, that will also begin to impact on not the cost of producing being lesser. Those elements will also be looked at, and the rearrangements will always be there, but within the norm of where everybody is, but also taking cognizance of our South African situation, where the levels of inequalities are high, the unemployment is high, poverty is high. These triple challenges, from time to time, we need to look at them and how many people are affected by them, so that we do not therefore add the pain, but at the same time, you have a company to run so that it's able to sustain itself. And but we hope we will arrive at a situation where South Africa becomes a better place for all. And we can then also begin to enjoy the fruits of a less cost type of an environment. But for now, we will be traveling in this difficult environment together with you, not because of our choices, but dictated by circumstances from time to time. But let's hope that the future will be one where the mixed implementation of energy scarce and renewables that are slowly coming into the stream, and the capacity of Eskom now with the unbundling being more focused on transmission, those who are in the transmission, on generation for those who are in generation, and also on distribution, perfecting, and obviously in the distribution will also be allowing other players such municipalities. We hope then it will then begin to take us out of this difficult environment and to a better situation. With that, I should just stop there and thank you very much for inviting us. Thanks.
Thanks, Deputy Minister. Honourable Chair, I think the first two questions that were asked by Honorable LBB, we had responded to quite extensively, but perhaps executive colleagues may come in to add where we may still need to accentuate further. I believe the question raised by Honorable Nana to the Deputy Minister has been answered, unless Eskom executives feel there's anything to add. The two questions you raised, firstly in terms of grid collapse, the whole purpose of load shedding is to exactly prevent this grid collapse. If Eskom sat and did nothing, then that's where the risk would occur of having a grid collapse. So we do so to prevent a total grid collapse, and perhaps Mr. Mumalo or other colleagues can add a bit of flavor to this, but I don't think we should all be sleeping awake at night, staying awake at night, robbing ourselves of peaceful sleep because people threaten that we'll have a total grid collapse. In terms of the second question, the interventions that were taken by National Treasury around the debt relief has placed Eskom on a solid path to be able to fulfill its obligations, particularly as already mentioned by the Deputy Minister, to fast-track the strengthening of the transmission grid to exactly open up opportunities for more players. The debt relief also puts us on a sound footing to begin to restore Eskom's credibility in markets, especially in terms of its rating, credit rating. It also allows us from an annual audit year to year to not have to worry about going concern issues. And it affords us to then, as a board, especially through our Investment and Finance Committee, to ensure that we are able to make smarter, better options in terms of our decision makings to strengthen income statement and balance sheet. So as I sit where I sit, with the debt relief over the next 3 years, unpalatable as it is with the tariffs that we have in place, all these are aimed at ensuring that Eskom is enabled to be on a financial sustainable path. So let me hear from my colleagues, Caleb, Becky, and maybe Monday, if there's anything you wish to add to any of these, and Martin, if necessary to add.
To you, Honorable Chairperson, I'm covered. I just want maybe Monday or Martin to speak on cable theft, illegal connections. I think that's the one that still needs to be covered. So we're comfortable from a financial sustainability perspective. Thank you.
Is Monday coming online? Mr. Bala?
Andazi Baba Chairperson uthi no Bala na okanye uthi Mr. Bala.
Mr.
In my
Bala.
other capacity, I am no Bala.
Monday Bala.
Yeah, apologies, Kelly. I missed the question. I was just.
Caleb and Monday, we have an audio problem.
I think he's struggling with connection. Yeah. Martin can respond. Thanks.
Yeah, Chair, Honorable Chairman, I would try and respond to the issue. The issue is around the cable theft and what is the impact on Eskom.
Yeah, please proceed, Martin.
The question raised was, what is the impact on the cable theft on Eskom? Now, besides the fact that there's the direct cost impact as a result of the cable theft. You're also losing revenue on the other hand, because you first got to fix the cables, and then you can start getting the revenue, or you can start producing the electricity. The other question that was raised is about the theft itself. In other words, where people are either bypassing meters, or they are tampering with the meters, or they're connecting to the system irregularly. We have done a calculation, and I must say it is a very conservative calculation. I think if we have to redo it now, and it's only an estimate, we will find that it's going to be much worse than that. And our calculation is showing that the impact is about 2.4 billion rand per annum. We are in the process of doing a new calculation to estimate it, and it is only an estimate that we can do at this point in time. Chair, that deals then with the impact on Eskom. Now, the question was raised, how does it impact your revenue application? So what we do is we then calculate our sales, and we also take into account there are these losses in terms of the calculation, and we include it into our revenue calculation for NERSA. I hope that I've answered with all the questions. Thank you.
Honorable Chair of the committee, I hope we dealt with all the questions that have been raised.
Chairperson, are you handing over to me?
Yes, sir. I'm handing over back to you, sir.
Okay, no, thanks, Chairperson. I think then we have had an opportunity to have a second bite. I don't see any further hands from the members. Even though some of the question might not be answered, I think you have a takeaway to go and apply yourselves thoroughly on those. This is not the last engagement. We continue to engage. I want to take now this opportunity to express the appreciation of the Select Committee on Public Enterprises and Communication for your appearance before this committee, and for briefing this committee, and for taking stock of the concerns raised by the members, because those concerns that we are raising are actually the concerns of the citizens of our country. It's a worrying factor, the issue of the increment. I think the spirit of what we are saying is that this increment is a little bit too high given all the challenges that we have in our country, the triple challenges of inequality, unemployment, and poverty. But over and above, the current impasse of the load shedding makes it very difficult for us to have a justification. And therefore, Chairperson, we hope but I think that decisions are taken by people, and if need, those decisions can also be reviewed by the very same people that they're taken, given circumstances. Now, thank you very much to the Deputy Minister for coming here, and may this continue to be the culture that prevails whenever an entity comes before the committee, that you are going to be always with us and ensure that the minister also does come here. We have not met the new minister. We would like to meet with him, not ceremonially, we would like to meet with him on the ground in the course of our work in this fashion in some cases. And therefore, please do express our appreciation to him as well for allowing you to come through to represent the ministry. To you, Chairperson, we are thankful because I have observed that you are always available and ready to engage. There's not a single point ever since I've taken up this position that you have been absent. You always make sure that you lead the board. Personally, you make yourself available, which is something that we must appreciate, we must not take for granted. And we wish to say, may you continue doing so, not only in this committee, in all committees, I know it can be overstretching because you are expected to appear before many committees. As I understand today, for instance, you chose to be with us here, and yet Scopa is grilling your former CEO on the other hand. So I really appreciate the fact that because this meeting started at the same time with that one of Scopa. So we are really thankful as well to the board members. And then let's also express the same appreciation to the management of Eskom. And one of the things that you have to do is to ensure that in everything that gets to be supplied to Eskom, look for the rural areas as well, look for entities in rural areas, look for the meaningful participation of the rural communities, so that there is a balance in terms of the resources in the country and the work that gets given to the citizens. It should not be an issue of urban versus rural. We are one country, and our people must get opportunities equally in an equitable way. That being said, thank you very much. I think we will now allow the Deputy Minister maybe to make a parting shot, and then after which we can then release you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I did my parting shot, I think, earlier. And thank you very much once more for inviting us. And as you said, I must communicate to the minister that his availability in the future meeting is going to be critical. I will do so. And secondly, that on the ground, also where you are, probably if you happen to visit some of our establishments, we'll try our best to receive you and be with you as you do your oversight at that particular point in time.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Do enjoy the Freedom Day tomorrow, or the celebration of democracy. All the best. You are now released to go back to your work. Thank you so much.
No, Sabulela Wako.
Honorable members, we'll just pause. We'll take a tea break of 2 minutes, and then we continue with our meeting, just to allow the guests to leave the room whilst we stretch our legs and take tea. Honorable members, are we still all here? I would like us to go to the second item on the agenda, which is the consideration of the minutes of our previous meeting. And these minutes were shared with the honorable members in good time. Can you please flight the minutes?
I'm trying to check. Give me a sec.
Yeah, you had already started flighting them, and then you removed them. You could see the first page. There are the minutes, honorable members. These are the minutes of the 22nd of March on Wednesday. And that's the attendance register. Members can just look out for any spelling mistakes or omissions. Please proceed. Those are the members of the Secretariat that were present, the opening and welcome. Proceed. You will just have to deal with the grammatical mistake. I see there on the resolutions that there is something amiss there. Yeah, you don't have to correct it here. We see where there's a mistake in the first sentence. Just correct that. Go ahead. That's a true reflection. Go ahead. Proceed to the next page. That's it. I think the meeting was as short as that, honorable members, because we had to send back the Centec delegation owing to the absence of the ministry. I think that's the essence of that meeting. Can we have a member? Because this is a very important record because it communicates that strong message that we resolved on. Can we have a mover of the adoption of these minutes?
I move, Chairperson.
Move.
Honorable Tebogo Modise move, Chair.
The Honorable Tebogo Modise moves. Can we have a seconder?
Honorable PP, second, sir.
Honorable Bibi has seconded the adoption of the minutes. In that respect, the minutes are duly adopted as a true reflection of our meeting of the 22nd of March. Thank you very much. Having arrived at that decision, members, let me take this opportunity to express my appreciation for your deliberations in the engagement which we had with Eskom and your commitment to attend our meetings and ensure that we do form a quorum is much appreciated. And today it was a very good engagement because it talks on matters which are very critical in our nation and the expectation of our people. So I want to say that I think we have arrived at the conclusion of our formal meeting today, and the meeting stands adjourned. Thank you, members, and I wish you the same as well for freedom celebrations tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, members. Bye-bye.